How's it going, guys? I hope you're enjoying this as much as we have been. I know there's only so many people watching, but I mean, the amount of people that this is going to reach is really some. It's important right now. Life-changing information being presented worldwide is all we can be asking for right now. So, up next we have Brad Olsen. For those of you who don't know who he is, he is an award-winning author, publisher at CCC Publishing and other books on travel and esoterica. He is founder of the San Francisco How Weird Street Fair. Today we are going to be diving into some ancient civilizations, I believe, and I believe he has some information on Antarctica, which I'm really excited to hear about. How's it going over there, Brad? I believe you're still muted.
Welcome to Ascension. Super happy to be here. I was at a watch party last night with the UFO panel. Yeah, so I was at the UFO panel last night here in Sedona, Arizona, with the JJ and Desiree Hertak and Alan Steinfeld. We were watching with about 40 people in the audience. It was pretty cool seeing you guys put this together. And what a great event. You guys really pulled it off. This is amazing.
Yeah, it has been amazing.
So if you know,
it's still breaking up a little bit, but I think we might be able to get away.
You know a little bit about me. Okay. So I was just in Antarctica last year. A fourth trip in South America and 26 days on a sailboat in South America. In fact, I was with Adam Apala, who was on the panel last night, and Jamie Jandover, who's coming on next in South America with Nassim Harriman and Brian Forrester. And we're going to all the megalithics, the Sacred Valley, all the important places, Peru and Bolivia. So really connected with these guys who I'm happy to see are part of the Port to Ascension conference as well. And so a little bit about myself. I'm the author of 10 books. My 10th book will be out at the end of this year. It's called Beyond Esoteric, Escaping Prison Planet. And it is along the lines of esoteric series with modern esoteric, future esoteric, which has been out for a couple years now and still doing quite well. And I will be doing a whole new presentation next year called the Hidden Esoteric in Plain Sight presentation. But for this year, COVID year, when our conferences were canceled in the middle part of the year or gone online, had the opportunity to finish my 10th book. And so sometimes when life gives you lemons, you just make lemonade. And it's been a great experience to do conferences. In fact, last weekend I was at Wopila conference here in Sedona. So they are coming back. But now this is one of 3 more internet conferences that I'll be doing for the rest of this year. And then starting to get booked for conferences in 2021. So let's hope this whole thing's over and we can all be face to face again. And we don't have to deal with these technology glitches.
Yeah, no kidding. So I'm very curious to hear about what you're gonna bring forward to us about Antarctica.
Sure. Yeah. So as far as I'm the only researcher in this field who has endeavored to go down there just to look into some of the mysteries that we've heard about what might be there, from antediluvian civilizations under the ice to pyramids poking out to massive crafts that are 3 miles across that the intelligence has nicknamed Nina Pinta Maria. I think I've pinpointed one of them in the New Schwabenland area, and we could talk about the Nazis' presence down there. When I was looking at maps, when I was getting ready for this trip, I found a National Geographic map from the 1980s. I was really surprised to see US German bases still occupied the New Schwabenland area. They never left. Germans have been down there since the 1930s. That's part of the big mysteries of what's down there. And then you have all these famous people going down there around the time president election, including John Kerry himself being there on election day 4 years ago. And you'd think he'd be to help his party, but he went and disappeared for 2 days. I have a friend who's actually on his way down to McMurdo right now for another session working at the largest base in Antarctica. And he reports that, yeah, nobody knew where Kerry was going. So there's some information that there are these large under ice bases there that may be production facilities or tied into extraterrestrials. I'll just tell you this: if there was any place in the world where you wanted to hide out on the surface, Antarctica would be the place. Because before the all the people start going back there, the tourism season starts in November. I don't know if many trips are going to be happening this year, but right around now, there's only about 1,000 humans on the entire continent of Antarctica, and that is the 5th largest continent in the world. And to be that sparsely populated, it really was, my experience, like going to another planet, like going to this planet where knows glaciers just come crashing down in the water, and even the animals have no fear of humans. It was a really amazing experience, but I did get very ill on the way down from seasickness crossing the Drake Passage, one of the roughest seas in the world. So
Yeah.
feeling like things are rolling pretty good.
No, as soon as you flip the video on,
You
we
want
start
to, you what?
I say, as soon
Should I
as you
turn it
flip
off?
that video on, we start losing you.
Then we'll keep it off.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
Quick
So,
snapshot.
sucks, but yeah.
I have a really quick question. So today, some anonymous account on Twitter shared footage of it looked like a skydiving or some type of expedition to Antarctica. And it was footage of this military team basically parachuting down to Antarctica and landing near 3 pyramids. And no one knows if this is legit footage or if it's CGI or what it is. I know Edge of Wonder shared it out. I was just curious if you were aware of this video going around.
I am, and I just watched it right before we came on. I don't think it's real, to be quite honest with you. I do know where some of the pyramids are located, and the most symmetrical of the 3 areas is only one single. These ones look like they were just Great Pyramids of Egypt, actually, and just CGI. You notice how blurry they were. Couldn't really get a good fixation on the pyramids themselves. And it's too bad I can't share some videos. I'd show you what I'm talking about. But I'll tell you what, I've been in touch with several outfitters who work on doing expeditions for people down there. And I floated the idea of pyramids down in Antarctica, and I showed them these pictures of what looked like pyramids. And they said, no, they're not. They're what they call nunataks, just attractive mountains. And I said, well, has anybody ever gone to check them out, do a sample, climb on them? And they're like, no, we just kind of fly over them, but we've never been down there. So I'd say the jury's still out, but I think that military one that is going around it's not legit. It should have been a lot clearer video. It just looks like they spliced a bunch of other things. And you see, guys, that's really one of the reasons I wanted to go down there and try to sift through all these rumors and innuendos and find out what exactly is real and what's not. And I'll tell you what is absolutely 100% real is there is a big no-fly zone over the South Pole. That we found out absolutely positively is happening, that year round, even when there's nobody down there, it's still a no-fly zone. And as I was on with there you go, as I was on with George Norrie right when I got back, and he was saying, well, why do they need a no-fly zone? Nobody's down there. What do they need to to hold that area from planes, and that's a good point. And that's also incidentally where Linda Moulton Howe's whistleblower Brian S. said he flew over and saw this massive hole, which Admiral Byrd himself was a pilot, and he himself flew over it and said that it was so big you could safely fly a plane into it, circle around, and fly back. Now you can see one of these photos, the one that's up right now, way in the distance is a pyramid. That does not look like the one in the video. There is one that is very close to the ocean, and I believe that one. There's another in the Shackleton Range that I have pictures of, and that's the one you see most frequently on Ancient Aliens and other shows, and that is not the one featured in the video either. So I don't know where those three are, but the fact that they look so much like the Great Pyramids just me to believe they're probably fake.
Yeah, well, thanks for clarifying that, because I mean, obviously I had speculations, but I just wanted to get your opinion on that.
Sure.
So,
and we all want to believe that that there are these things. Yep.
Oh, nothing. I was just gonna. So as far as like any disclosure that's coming forward, do you know of like, for sure, is there like ancient civilizations, artifacts and stuff like that that have been recovered by mainstream science that they're just waiting to release to the public? Do you know anything about that or not?
No, I can't say for sure. I can't sure that there are these large cracks of the ice. I can just say that from snooping on Google Earth and following all the videos that come out on Antarctica that there are some tantalizing clues. However, in my presentation I give called The Hidden Anomalies of Antarctica, I also show that there's masking, that there are areas that are intentionally whited out, screened over, not even with much touch job at all, just a flat white screen. So that leads me to believe that they are hiding some things down there, but then others are very, some tantalizing clues that there may be some antediluvian civilizations. There's places I show in my presentation that look like Mayan pyramids with perfect right angles and staircases going up the middle. And as we know, Mother Nature does not create perfect right angles. It's very infrequent that you would have anything like that just by chance. So that leads me to believe that a lot of these may be wishful thinking, almost like how a lot of the UFO images may not be, it might be our own ship, they might be clever CGI. I just think we have to be very discerning when we look at what here down there, it's not on there. For example, I was told that the military ran operations down there, and that is not the case. Since the Antarctica Treaty in 1961, it is not permitted for militaries to do operations, test nuclear bombs, and that's kind of interesting. Why would they put that in the Antarctica Treaty unless we were testing bombs? And then there's still to this day a classified operation called Project Argus, when we were lighting up the high atmosphere with nuclear bombs, which was alternative 1, 2, that we're going to release all the bad greenhouse gases through the holes we poke in the upper atmosphere. And that created in the ozone. Remember, we heard some about that when we were kids, that aerosol was destroying the atmosphere. It wasn't that at all. It was nuking the atmosphere, and that created those holes in the southern hemisphere. But I think they also lobbed a couple nukes over at the German base, at base 211, or also known as the New Berlin base, in the late 1950s. And that was in response to the Operation High Jump expedition led by Admiral Byrd, which up and turned around 2 months into after they were fronted with craft that Admiral Byrd told a Chilean journalist have the ability to fly pole to pole at incredible speeds. Well, guys, as far as I know, we still don't have craft that could fly pole to pole at incredible speeds. So this was 1946, 1947 high jump where a craft came out of the water, split one of our destroyers in half called the U.S. Murdoch. They could not this thing down. That precipitated the hasty retreat from the Southern Oceans right shore of Robinland. So there are really interesting things that are going down there. Now, Neil's showing some of these images of Antarctica, iceberg melting. This was one of the first we saw as we were watching the continent peaking on the shell, floating north in warmer oceans and eventually melting. And there absolutely is melting going on there. There are areas of ice that is just much lower. There's a lot of calving, and then there's a lot of animal species down there that are moving around because the cold water penguins are now shrinking in size because the warm weather penguin moving into their territory, things like that. But I'll tell you this, I start my presentation with this image of Antarctica by NASA, and it shows these areas, especially where I was, the northern tip of the Palmer Peninsula, is melting very rapidly in area we went to. And it was very evident, and there were scientists that were studying it. They were telling us about it as well. But on this NASA map, it also shows areas that are cooling, that are actually accumulating ice. And that's probably why we don't see the sea levels making any kind of drastic moves up or down. The other thing is this year, they have had one of the harshest winters on record down in southern Patagonia, where hundreds of heads of cattle and sheep have all frozen to death, and they've gotten record snow. So it doesn't seem like it's a universal warming, but it looks like it's extreme warming and then extreme cooling events. So it is more like a change or climate things in change, and no other place like Antarctica is feeling the pressure where no people live, but our north and south are feeling the effect of climate change more than anywhere else in the world because they're so sensitive to any sort of change. So it's interesting to talk to climatologists when they explain what's going on in the Arctic and Antarctic region. Of course, we know in the Arctic region with the warming, you have a lot of methane gas that's being released from the peat bogs of Siberia, for example. And this is connecting to the ongoing climate change, greenhouse gases that are entering the atmosphere and wreaking havoc in certain areas. But how Mother Nature is able to balance that out with areas of cooling and actually cumulative ice in the Antarctica is one great mystery that I would love to know the answer to, that I'm not quite sure how to say that that is happening. But things are definitely moving down there, including a lot of the massive ice shelves. Just this last summer, you have pieces of chunks of Ross ice shelf the size of Delaware breaking off. I mean, the pieces are getting bigger as well that break off from ice shelves. And can you imagine a ship would just be about the size of that little iceberg you see on the left? That's how big some of these shelves are, like 30 or 40 stories tall and perfectly flat. So we had to do iceberg watch when we were on the sailboat. There was just 14 of us, 3 Americans and 4 or 11 Poles. And the vessel we were on was from Poland. So it was really going down there. You know, like I said, I got really sick. I lost about 25 pounds on the Drake Passage, not eating for several days. Talk about a crash diet. If anybody out there really wants to lose a lot of weight fast, take a boat over to Antarctica. that'll happen for you. Even on a cruise ship, about 50% people on cruise ship get seasick. But on our boat, we caught a storm, and it was really rough going. My partner at the time, Emily Infinity, she thought we were done for. She didn't think we were going to make it, but I told her, as long as the boat doesn't take on water, we're going to get through it. Of course we did.
Awesome. Now,
so
one thing is,
what do you guys think? Yeah.
Well, one thing is for sure, that if the ice keeps melting, if something is down there, it's just Mother Nature is going to expose it without us having to do much about it. And that could be one way we're going to really discover what's going on down there. And it's interesting, like you said.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, that it's just going to melt and expose this stuff. So it could be happening because of the melting ice. That's a good point. Since you got to understand the distances are so vast to travel over the continent, that it would be very difficult to go to these places. It's very expensive as well.
Oh, I can imagine. We have a question from somebody about your books. I know this is switching subjects a little bit, but they're curious to know if your esoteric books are meant to be read in the order they were written in. Are they in chronological order, or does it matter?
Well, great question. Yeah, Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses, is book 1 in the series. They can be read that way. It doesn't necessarily have to be so. I never repeat my information. All the chapters are unique. Future Esoteric, The Unseen Realms, it goes more into the secret state and how the UFO, ET phenomenon has been covered up for so long, and then has a forward-looking final section called Utopia, which looks at solutions for humanity and ways that we move forward. And now Beyond Esoteric are all these subjects that hadn't been covered by the esoteric teachers of the 19th century. They would have no idea what transhumanism is, or certain things that are happening to us today that in my description is going beyond the esoteric. It's very much a unique 21st century exploration of what is being hidden from us. And that is, the real word occult means that which is hidden, and esoteric means that which is known by a select few. So when everybody starts to understand subject, the word actually changes to exoteric, and that's when it becomes common knowledge. But time when it's known to only a few, these are esoteric subjects. And no, the books do not have to be read in sequential order. They can all be standalone. But it kind of does help to know the full length of what I'm talking about to go into in the book, on to the next chapter of each book.
Well, thank you for clarifying that. Another person has a question. Anonymous attendee wants to know if you can take a radar-equipped flight over selected sites in Antarctica.
A radar flight. Well, what I've been hearing is people are flying drones over. There's only one satellite that goes over Antarctica once a day, because we were trying to do some live netcasts, and it's just prohibitively expensive and difficult. We have connection for a very short period each day. To fly planes over, well, like I said, there's the big no-fly zone near the South Pole. But per the Antarctica Treaty, this is another misconception. People think that you wouldn't be able to go, or the military would stop you. It's not the case. In fact, all we did was check out of the Argentinian customs. And it was the first time in my life I got stamped out of a destination, but not stamped in. In fact, we did not get stamped back in until we returned to Ushuaia, Argentina. So that's kind of a unique thing about it. It is kind of a no man's land down there, where people may not have the opportunity to feel like they're in any kind of country at all. In fact, the whole Antarctica Treaty treats Antarctica as a biosphere that is owned by all people, not by any nations. There are some claims by countries, but they're not really recognized by the international community or the Antarctica Treaty. It is a biosphere that is open to science as well as discovery, which means tourism. So we're allowed to drown there. But again, the distances are so vast. To do one of these outfitter trips is tens of thousands of dollars per person. So it's a bit of an expense. And our trip was several $1,000s a person as well to be on this sailboat. And I feel like we got a deal. You go down in a cruise ship, you're only there for 5 full days. We were down there for 15 full days, although it took several long back.
Where do you stand on the Antarctica is Atlantis theory? I know there's a lot of researchers who have proven that half of the continent was flash frozen, as opposed to the other half that looks like it was frozen during a longer process, and the side that was flash frozen looks like it was once a tropical paradise.
Yeah, that's a great question. And in fact, there are many fossils, a place called Mount Beardmore or Mount Buckley at the top of the Beardmore Glacier, where ferns and dinosaur bones can be found, which could only have lived in a temperate environment, not necessarily on the equator, but more like a 45-degree ship would have sent Antarctica into its present position. That is the eastern Antarctica, the big pie, round-shaped part of Antarctica. That is one of the oldest land masses on Earth. It's been dated at over 3 billion years old. It's a portion of Pangaea that broke off and moved down there at some time. And you have Western Antarctica, that big finger, and the Transantarctic Mountains, which is the newer portion of the continent at only 700 million years old. And that indeed is where some people think the Atlantis antediluvian civilizations can be found. In fact, that's where Corey Good pinpointed it as well. And in those areas, that eastern Antarctica, well, that did come right down the mid-Atlantic, which is also geothermically active. And Antarctica is the most volcanoes of any continent of the world. It's the most geothermically active continent. So there are all sorts of volcanoes, hot springs, and the propensity for these giant domes to be under the ice, which, if warmed by geothermal activity, could actually not be that cold, could be livable. Of course, you'd have to grow your own food. You'd have to import just about everything because there's not of resources that you could tap into down there except for fresh water.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that there's some.
This looks like a picture.
I've definitely heard there's some underwater lakes there. And unfortunately, believe it or not, we're just about out of time already. It flies by when you only have 40 minutes and you're talking about some amazing stuff. So is there any last words, any last thing you want to plug or promote before we turn it back over to Neil?
Well, it was a pleasure speaking to you guys. I knew it would go quick. It's an important subject. I'm hoping that you enjoyed some of this information I presented here. And if you want to know more about me, bradolsen.com is my website, and PCC Publishing is my book publishing website. And I invite you all to take a look at what I've got and check out my new book, Beyond Esoteric, when it comes out in another month at the end of this year.
Well, thank you so much, Brad, for coming on and sharing all that amazing stuff. You're definitely getting me interested into looking into Antarctica a little more. So, and I'm sure a lot of other people too. And everybody who's listening, if you don't know who we are, I'm Tyler. This is Aaron from Journey to Truth podcast. I know Neil introduced us, but yeah, if you feel compelled at all, come head over to our channel and check us out. We're always looking for new followers, and we're doing a lot of awesome stuff there. And we are getting ready to turn this back over to Neil. And there he is right there. I think Jamie Janover is next. Ancient structures and the connection to fractal space-time geometry. It sounds amazing.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a good conversation. Thank you guys, and thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Brad.
Oh, thank you, Neil. Thanks for having me on.
For sure.
See you guys later.
Probably jump in on the closing panel and say goodbye to everybody.
Yes, please.